Helen Ward never imagined a normal Thanksgiving phone call would turn into her worst fear. She sat in her quiet living room, smiling as she talked with her son, Jason, about the holiday menu. But when he forgot to end the call, everything shifted. Through the phone, she heard Jason whisper, "They don't suspect a thing." A woman answered sharply, "Rich old folks are always the easiest to kidnap." Helen froze, gripping her phone tightly. "Jason, are you still there?" she whispered. No reply came. Instead, footsteps sounded, followed by a truth that made her blood run cold. Helen recognized the woman's voice at once. It was Mara, Jason's wife, who always smiled sweetly but never kindly. "Did your mom fall for it?" Mara asked. Jason replied, "Oh yes. Completely." Helen leaned closer to the phone, her heartbeat thundering in her ears. Mara continued, "She's so excited about Thanksgiving. Perfect timing for us." Jason said quietly, "With the gambling debts rising, we need that inheritance fast." Mara added, "2 pills in her wine and she'll be out in minutes." The room spun as Helen listened, realizing her own family was plotting against her. She sank slowly into her kitchen chair, the same one her late husband, Frank, bought her years ago. Jason spoke again, calm and confident. "We'll take her to the cabin and send the ransom email from her laptop." Mara's voice grew colder. "If she doesn't pay fast enough, we say the kidnappers panicked." Jason gave a short laugh. "Rich old people are too trusting." Helen softly ended the call, her fingers trembling. On the table sat her Thanksgiving meal plan: turkey, stuffing, and a plan to steal her life. But Helen wasn't as weak as they believed. Frank had left her more than savings. He left her contacts. She reached for the business card of Mr. Carter, a private investigator who once worked with Frank's company. Her hands trembled as she dialed his number. "Carter Investigations," he answered. "Mr. Carter. This is Helen Ward, Frank Ward's wife. I need help urgently." His voice softened. "Mrs. Ward, tell me what's going on." Helen stared at the family photo on her shelf. Jason smiling like an innocent boy. "I need help catching my son planning to kidnap me." There was a long pause. "Mrs. Ward," he finally said, "I think we should meet tonight." Helen closed her phone and felt something stronger push aside the fear. Determination. If Jason wanted to play dangerous games, he had forgotten the woman who managed Frank's accounts for decades. That evening, she met Mr. Carter at a small cafe downtown. He wasn't the rough detective she expected. His navy suit was neat, his shoes polished, and his briefcase expensive. "Mrs. Ward," he said gently as she sat down, "please start from the beginning. Tell me everything you heard." Helen repeated every word she'd overheard, watching Mr. Carter's calm expression shift into deep concern. When she finished, he placed his pen down slowly. "Mrs. Ward, how much money are we talking about?" Helen took a shaky breath. "Frank left me $2 million, the house, and his investments. Jason knows about some of it, but not everything." Mr. Carter scribbled notes. "And these debts, did he mention them to you before?" Helen shook her head. "No. He asked for small loans, a few hundred here and there. I thought it was for repairs. I didn't know it was gambling." Mr. Carter adjusted his glasses and leaned forward. "When is this Thanksgiving dinner supposed to happen?" "Next Thursday," Helen answered softly. "They usually come at 4. He tapped his notebook. "That gives us several days. Enough time to plan." He looked up again. "Mrs. Ward, once we begin recording evidence, there is no going back. Your relationship with your son will change forever." Helen swallowed hard. "My relationship with Jason ended when he decided I was worth more dead than alive." Mr. Carter nodded slowly. "Then we start tonight." He outlined the plan carefully. "First, I'll run background checks on Jason and Mara. Financial records, phone records, everything. Second, I'll install hidden cameras in your house." Helen's eyes widened. "Is that legal?" "It's your home," he replied. "You can record anything happening in it." He continued, Third, we document every movement they make between now and Thursday. Helen stared down at her hands. What if they realize something is wrong? Mr. Carter gave a small, confident smile. They won't. They think you're an easy target. Helen exhaled slowly. When do we begin? Tonight. I'll bring the equipment after dark, he said. Tomorrow morning you call Jason and Mara. Act excited about Thanksgiving. Helen nodded, remembering all the corporate dinners she had smiled through even when Frank whispered about people he couldn't stand. I can do that, she said. Mr. Carter packed his recorder away. And one more thing, he added. From this moment on you cannot tell anyone. Not neighbors, not friends. Helen looked down at the table. Mr. Carter, I've been alone for 3 years. I can manage 8 more days. After leaving the cafe, Mr. Carter handed her a small phone. This is a secure line, he said firmly. If anything feels wrong, anything at all, you call me day or night. Helen nodded and walked to her car, the cool air brushing against her face. For the first time since Frank's funeral, she felt something powerful stirring inside her. A purpose. Jason and Mara thought they were hunting a harmless, elderly woman. They had no idea Helen Ward had just begun to hunt back. And tonight she would be ready. The next morning at exactly 9 a.m., Helen called Jason, just as Mr. Carter instructed. Jason answered cheerfully, his tone warm and sunny, nothing like the man she'd overheard. Hi, Mom. What's up? He asked. Helen forced a smile into her voice. Oh, I just wanted to confirm Thursday's menu. Are you still bringing that special wine? Jason didn't hesitate. Of course. Mara picked out something fancy. You'll love it. Helen swallowed the bitterness rising in her throat. Lovely, dear. And could you two come a little earlier? Maybe around 2. Jason paused, unsure. 2. That's pretty early, Mom. We said 4. Helen made her voice crack just slightly. I know, sweetheart. I've just been feeling lonely lately. It would mean a lot to me. On the other end, Jason sighed, caught between guilt and deceit. Okay, Mom. 2 is fine. Helen smiled softly even though he couldn't see it. Thank you, darling. It will be wonderful to see you both. After hanging up, she opened Mr. Carter's notebook full of instructions. Act normal. Gather clues. Study their behavior. Helen steadied herself. She was now both mother and investigator. At 11 a.m., Helen drove to Jason's workplace, a car dealership where he worked as a sales manager. The receptionist, a bright young woman with curly brown hair, greeted her warmly. Mrs. Ward. Jason didn't say you were coming. Helen lifted a lunch bag. Just surprising him with his favorite sandwich. The receptionist smiled. He's finishing a call. You can wait in his office. Once inside the small office, Helen set the lunch down and quietly looked around. His computer screen flashed with unread emails marked urgent. Papers sat scattered, but one drawer caught her attention. The filing cabinet was unlocked. Helen hesitated only a second before pulling it open. The first folder she found made her chest tighten. Bank statements. The numbers painted a story she feared. Huge withdrawals, missing savings, and credit card debt soaring beyond $60,000. Oh, Jason, she whispered. Before she could close the drawer, a voice came from the doorway. Mom. Helen froze, her back stiffening. She turned slowly. Jason stood there, eyebrows raised. What are you doing? Helen held up a pen she had grabbed. Looking for something to leave you a note, she said smoothly. Jason's shoulders relaxed slightly, though suspicion lingered in his eyes. I'm just stressed. A big sale fell through, he muttered. Helen smiled gently and pressed the lunch bag into his hands. Eat, sweetheart. It will help. She kissed his cheek like she used to when he was a boy. See you Thursday. As she walked out, her heartbeat raced with a mix of sadness and steel. Once in her car, she dialed the secure phone. Mr. Carter answered instantly. What did you find? Helen swallowed. Debt. A lot of it. Mr. Carter exhaled slowly. That explains everything. What if he's desperate, Mr. Carter? Helen whispered. What if someone dangerous is pushing him? There was a moment of silence. That might be true, Mr. Carter replied. But desperation doesn't excuse planning to drug and kidnap you. Helen nodded, wiping her eyes. You're right. Mr. Carter's tone changed. Mrs. Ward, we found something else, something troubling. Helen straightened in her seat. What is it? Mara's background check came in. There are patterns. Helen felt her chest tighten. What kind of patterns? The kind that suggest she's done this before. Helen drove home in stunned silence. When she arrived, she opened her email. Sitting in her inbox was a file from Mr. Carter. The pages told a terrifying story. Mara had been married twice before Jason. Her first husband died during a home break-in. Her second died in a car accident. Both had life insurance. Both deaths were accidental. Both made Mara wealthy. Helen stared at a younger photo of Mara. Beautiful, polished, smiling sweetly. But her eyes looked hollow and sharp. Her phone buzzed. A text from Mara. Can't wait for Thursday, Mom. We have a surprise. Helen's hands trembled as she set the phone down. Moments later, the secure line rang. Mrs. Ward, Mr. Carter said, voice tense. There's a new issue. Someone has been calling your house phone and hanging up when it reaches the machine. Helen stiffened. Checking if I'm home, she whispered. Yes, he replied. 7 times in the last 2 days. Helen looked out her window at her quiet neighborhood. Mr. Carter, should I leave my house? He hesitated. It might be safer. Helen shook her head, even though he couldn't see. No. If they want to hunt me here, we'll hunt them here. Mrs. Ward, Mr. Carter warned. You're dealing with people who may have killed before. Helen straightened her back, her voice steady. Then they should learn what happens when they threaten someone who ran a household and a business for decades. Silence rested on the line before Mr. Carter said, All right. What's your plan? Helen looked at the wine bottle on her counter. The perfect place for their sedatives. I'll call Jason and tell him I'm feeling dizzy. I'll ask to move Thanksgiving to tomorrow night. That's extremely dangerous, he replied. Exactly, Helen said. It will force them to act faster and make mistakes. What if they panic and try to harm you immediately? Mr. Carter asked. Helen closed her eyes. They won't. They need me alive long enough to move the money. Another pause. You're playing a risky game, he whispered. Helen looked at Frank's photo on her mantel. I've been alone since Frank died, she said softly. If I don't fight now, I never will. She hung up and dialed Jason. He answered quickly. Mom. Hi, dear, she said sweetly. I'm not feeling well. Could we move Thanksgiving dinner to tomorrow night? Silence. A dangerous, calculating silence. Then, I'll talk to Mara and call you back. Helen placed her phone on the table and waited, her fingers tapping softly against the wood. She didn't have to wait long. Jason called back within 15 minutes. His voice was cheerful, too cheerful. Great news, Mom. Mara says tomorrow night is perfect. She's excited about a smaller, more intimate dinner. Helen forced warmth into her reply. Wonderful, dear. What time? 6 o'clock, he said quickly. Mara wants to bring that special wine she's been saving. Of course, Helen whispered. I'll set the dining room table. As she hung up, her hands finally stopped trembling. The trap was set. Helen dialed the secure phone. Mr. Carter answered instantly. Well, he asked. Tomorrow night, she said. 6 o'clock. They want to use the dining room. Mr. Carter sighed. That room only has one exit. It's dangerous. But it has the best camera coverage, Helen replied. We'll get everything on tape. Mr. Carter's voice softened. Mrs. Ward, once they drug you, how long can you stay conscious? Helen opened a drawer and took out a small bottle. Frank had diabetes. I still keep glucose tablets in the house. They'll delay the sedatives, just long enough to get their confession. That's risky, Mr. Carter warned. Dangerous, even. Helen nodded. I know. But if they think I'm unconscious too soon, they'll stop talking. Mr. Carter took a slow breath. All right, then we prepare. I'll be outside in a surveillance van. At the first sign of danger, I'm coming in. Helen agreed. And the panic button stays in your left pocket, he reminded her firmly. 3 taps and we rush the house. Helen repeated the instructions carefully. I understand. That night, she walked through her quiet halls, touching the walls she had lived beside for decades. Tomorrow everything would change. Later that evening, Helen did something she hadn't done in years. She called her older sister Linda, who lived across the country. Helen, is everything okay? Linda asked immediately. Helen hesitated. If something ever happens to me, promise me you won't believe it was an accident. Linda's voice cracked. Helen, what are you talking about? Just promise, Helen whispered. After a long silence, Linda agreed. I promise. But you're frightening me. Helen wiped her eyes. I love you, Linda. Take care of yourself. When she ended the call, she wrote a letter explaining everything and hid it in her desk. The next morning began quietly. Helen woke earlier than usual, her mind sharper than it had been in years. For the first time, she wasn't just surviving, she was preparing for battle. At 8 a.m., she called Jason to confirm dinner. His voice was bright. Good morning, Mom. Ready for tonight? Helen smiled into the phone. Oh yes, dear. I can't wait to see you both. Jason laughed softly. Mara's cooking all morning. She wants everything to be perfect. Helen found herself fascinated by how easily he lied. She's very thoughtful, Helen replied. I'm looking forward to spending time together. After the call, Helen glanced around her home. Everything looked normal. The sun through the curtains, the clean dishes drying by the sink, the quiet hum of the refrigerator. But she felt different, stronger. Mr. Carter called at noon. Mrs. Ward, he said, I have an update. Mara's brother, Owen, is in town. He checked into a hotel nearby. Helen's heart dropped. A third person. Yes, Mr. Carter said. He might help with the kidnapping. Helen stared at her living room, suddenly aware of every shadow. How dangerous is he? Very, Carter said plainly. But knowing he's here helps us control the situation. Helen thought for a moment, then spoke with calm resolve. Mr. Carter, I want to ask them direct questions at dinner. About money, stress, debt. If we catch them lying on camera, it shows motive. That's bold, Mr. Carter admitted. And it could raise suspicion. Not if I make it sound motherly, Helen replied. Jason knows I worry about finances. If I approach it gently, they'll talk. Mr. Carter hesitated, then said, All right, but choose your wording carefully. Helen rubbed her thumb along the edge of the table. I've been choosing my words carefully my entire life. At 3 p.m., Helen set the dining table with Frank's old china. The plates were smooth and cool beneath her fingers. She arranged flowers, lit candles, and double-checked the placement of the hidden cameras. Everything needed to look perfect. At 4 o'clock, she began cooking, a roast that filled the house with a warm smell of garlic and herbs. It would be ready just in time. Mr. Carter called again. Everything's in place, he reported. We have full visual and audio. Helen nodded slowly. Good. Tonight, they'll reveal their true selves. She wiped her hands on a towel, steady and controlled. At 5 o'clock, Helen took out the glucose tablets and placed them in her pocket. At 5:15, she checked her makeup and smoothed her hair, wanting to appear exactly like the gentle, trusting woman Jason believed she was. At 5:30, she took a deep breath and looked around her home. Memories of Frank lingered everywhere. Wish me luck, she whispered to the empty room. Outside, Mr. Carter's team waited. At 5:50, headlights swept across her window. Car door slammed. Jason and Mara had arrived, 20 minutes early. Helen placed a warm smile on her face and went to greet them. Jason carried a bouquet of bright yellow flowers, her favorite. Mara wore a soft blue dress and a flawless smile. "Mom," Jason said, hugging her warmly. "You look beautiful tonight." "Thank you, dear," Helen replied gently. "You both look wonderful." Mara handed her a wine bottle. "This is a special one," she said sweetly. "We thought tonight would be perfect for it." Helen took it with steady hands. "How thoughtful of you." Jason laughed lightly. "Shall we get started?" Helen stepped aside and welcomed them in. "Yes, sweetheart," she said calmly. "Let's begin dinner." Helen led them to the kitchen, keeping her voice soft and warm. "Dinner's almost ready. I hope you're hungry." Jason grinned. "Starving. It smells amazing." Mara placed her purse carefully on the counter, her eyes scanning the room with quiet calculation. Helen noticed it. She also noticed how Mara kept glancing at the wine bottle, her fingers brushing the label. "Should we open it now?" Jason asked lightly. "Let's wait until dinner," Helen replied gently. "I want everything to feel special tonight." Mara's smile tightened. "Of course, Margaret. Tonight is very special." Once they sat in the dining room, Jason opened the bottle with practiced ease. The cork popped and he filled 3 glasses, hers fuller than the others. Helen watched the red swirl settle. "A toast," Mara said sweetly, raising her glass. "To family and new beginnings." "To family," Helen echoed. She took a slow sip. The flavor was deep and rich, with a faint bitterness she knew wasn't from the grapes. Her glucose tablets were already dissolving in her stomach. Jason smiled warmly. "You always make holidays feel perfect, Mom." But Helen could see it now, the lie hiding behind his eyes. As they ate, Helen began her gentle questioning. "Jason, dear, you seem tired. Are you two managing okay financially?" Jason froze mid-bite. Mara reached for his hand. "We're fine, Margaret. Just normal stress." Helen gave a worried frown. "I worry, you know. Money problems can break families apart." Jason sighed. "Mom, things have been tight, but we're handling it." Helen leaned forward slightly. "If there were debts, gambling debts for example, I'd want to help. You can always tell me the truth." Mara's eyes flickered with something sharp. "We said we're fine." Helen nodded softly, pretending to drop the subject. "All right, dear." She took another sip of wine. A wave of dizziness washed through her body, slow but growing. The glucose tablets pushed back the fog, but she knew she didn't have long. "Mara," she said gently, "you've married into our family so beautifully. Frank would have liked you." Mara's smile was tight. "Thank you." Helen's voice softened with motherly warmth. "But I sometimes wonder, why do you choose men under pressure?" Mara's fork froze. "Excuse me." Helen met her eyes calmly. "Your first 2 husbands. Their stress. Their accidents." The room grew still. Jason looked between them, confused. "Mom, what are you talking about?" Helen kept her tone soft and sad. "I just want you both to be safe. Life insurance money doesn't replace real love." Mara's expression darkened. "Margaret, where are you getting these ideas?" Helen tilted her head gently. "Patterns, dear. They tell stories." Jason set down his fork sharply. "Mom, enough." Helen lowered her gaze. "Of course, sweetheart." Then she whispered just loud enough for the microphone to pick up. "I just don't want anyone getting hurt tonight." Mara stood abruptly. "Jason, help your mother to the living room. She doesn't look well." Helen let her head droop, playing into it. "I feel dizzy." Jason rushed to her side. "Let me help you, Mom." As he lifted her arm, Helen pressed the panic button 3 times inside her pocket. Maybe call an ambulance," she murmured. Mara shook her head quickly. "No. Let's get her comfortable first." Her voice had no warmth now. "We need her calm." Helen allowed her knees to buckle slightly. Something's wrong. They lowered her onto the couch. Mara checked her pulse with icy efficiency. She'll be out in minutes, she whispered. Good. Owen will be here soon. Helen kept her breathing shallow, her eyes half closed. Jason leaned over her. Mom, just rest, okay? But his voice shook, not from guilt but from fear of failing Mara. Footsteps echoed outside. A van door slammed. Owen entered through the back door without knocking. Is she under? He asked. Almost, Mara said. We move now. Good, Owen replied. We don't have much time. Jason paced nervously. We need to hurry. If she wakes. She won't, Mara snapped. Grab her arms. Owen lifted Helen by the shoulders. Mara grabbed her legs. Helen let her body go limp, letting her head loll forward. Let's put her in the van before the email sends, Mara ordered. Jason stepped toward the door, then froze. Did you hear that? He whispered. Mara frowned. Hear what? Jason turned toward the window. Cars. Owen cursed. Move. Now. But it was too late. The front door exploded open with a crash. Mr. Carter stepped in first, followed by 5 officers in tactical gear. Police. Don't move. Owen tried to run toward the back, but 2 officers blocked him instantly. Mara lifted her hands, eyes wide but calculating. Officers, thank goodness. Helen fainted. We were helping her. Mr. Carter didn't even blink. Mara Collins dropped the act. We have your entire conversation recorded. Jason froze, his hands trembling. Mom, he whispered. Helen slowly opened her eyes. Hello, Jason. Jason stared at her, completely pale. How are you awake? Glucose, Helen said plainly. It delays sedatives. Something your wife should have researched better. Mara's expression twisted with cold fury. You tricked us. Helen sat up slowly. No, dear. You tricked yourselves. Owen growled as officers cuffed him. Jason backed into the wall, tears filling his eyes. Mom, I didn't mean. You meant every word, Helen interrupted gently. I heard you. Mara glared at her. This isn't over. Helen smiled softly. For you. It is. As the police led them out, Jason looked back at his mother. I'm sorry, he whispered. Helen didn't look away. I hope someday you truly mean that. When the door closed, silence filled the room. Mr. Carter approached her carefully. Mrs. Ward. You did incredibly well. Helen exhaled shakily. I just did what I had to do. Officers finished securing the scene while Mr. Carter sat beside her. Your testimony, combined with the recordings, will put all 3 away for a long time. Helen nodded slowly. Good. No one else should be hurt by them. The investigation that followed uncovered everything. Mara's past marriages, Owen's criminal ties, Jason's debts to dangerous lenders, and the full kidnapping plan. Prosecutors moved quickly. Mara and Owen received life sentences for conspiracy, attempted murder, and past crimes tied to insurance fraud. Jason was given 12 years for attempted kidnapping and cooperating with a criminal operation. Helen attended every hearing, calm and steady. When Jason tried to meet her eyes in court, she looked away. She wasn't ready to forgive. Perhaps she never would be. Months passed, and Helen began rebuilding her life. Mr. Carter visited often, checking on her safety and updating her on the case. One afternoon he told her, "You'll be glad to know we dismantled the entire network Owen worked with." Helen poured him tea. "So no one else will be targeted." "Not by them," he replied. Helen nodded, relief washing through her. "Thank you, Mr. Carter. For everything." He smiled. "You saved yourself. I only helped." For the first time in months, Helen felt her home return to being her home again. Safe, quiet, hers. One morning, Helen received a call from the prison. It was Jason. She answered after a long hesitation. "Mom, please," he said softly. "I know I don't deserve it, but I hope one day you'll forgive me." Helen closed her eyes. Jason, forgiveness isn't a gift. It's something earned. Jason sniffed. I'm trying. She spoke gently but firmly. Then keep trying. Maybe one day, I'll open your letters. After a long silence, Jason whispered, I love you, Mom. Helen felt her throat tighten. I hope someday you understand what love truly means. That evening, Helen sat in her quiet living room, watching the sun set through her window. She poured herself a fresh cup of tea. No sedatives, no fear, only peace. She thought of Frank, of the memories in the walls, and the strength she never realized she carried. She had survived betrayal, danger, and heartbreak, and she had won. As she turned off the lights and walked toward her bedroom, she whispered to herself, never underestimate an old woman who knows her worth. The house felt safe again. The story was over. And Helen Ward was finally free.